Welcome to video 4 of Unit 3. In this PowerPoint, we are going to cover the two major wars that ancient Greece fought in, which is both the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian Wars. So in your notes packet, this should be the page that starts with guided notes on Greek history, and it is two-sided, so please make sure you get both sides of the notes packet. So we're going to start with the Persian Wars. And the Persian Wars are going to be fought between Greece and Persia, which makes sense. That's why it's called the Persian Wars. And this is going to occur between 499 and 449 BC. So that is about 50 years. And the cause of the Persian War is that Greeks were settled in Ionia, located in Anatolia. Remember, Anatolia is present-day Turkey. It is just across the Aegean Sea from Greece's mainland. And if you recall, there wasn't a whole lot of farmland available on Greece land. And so what they did is they settled different cities in Ionia, or Anatolia, the region of Anatolia. So the Greeks that were settled here are going to get taken over by Persia. Persia exists at the same time as Greece. These things are overlapping. And Persia is going to conquer Anatolia. And so all of these cities that are Greek cities that are under the control of Persia, they're going to start to rebel or fight back. And Athens is going to help support these cities. So Athens sends ships and soldiers to help the Ionian Greek rebels. The Persian king Darius is not going to take kindly to this. Darius is going to defeat the uprising in Anatolia, but now he's upset with Athens because Athens has decided to take up arms against him. And that is what leads to the Persian Wars. So who fought in the Persian Wars? 490 BC, Persians land 25,000 men north of Athens at Marathon. So we know it's going to be the Persians and at least the Athenians. More than just the Athenians are going to get involved, though. The Persians are going to fight against the Greeks as a whole. Persia was ruled by Darius and Xerxes after Darius dies. And if you recall from our last unit, we did talk about how Darius fails in his fighting against Greece, and so Xerxes tries to continue the fight with Greece to kind of make it as payback for what they did to his father's rule. On the Greek side are going to be the Athenians, the Spartans, and the Ionians. Remember, the Ionians are those rebels. More city-states will be involved, but Athens and Sparta are the two strongest that are going to be involved. There are three major battles that we are going to talk about in this video, including the one on the screen here, the Battle of Marathon. We will also talk about the Battle of Thermopylae, and we will talk about the Battle of Salamis. These are the three biggest battles in the Persian Wars. So with the Battle of Marathon, we have a battle that takes place where opposing armies meet at the plains of Marathon near Athens. So if you're looking on the map here, Marathon is located right here, and Athens is located right here. So this is pretty close to where Athens is located, and this is where this battle is going to take place. The invasion was a combined land and sea invasion, and so the Persians are going to be the ones who are invading, who are coming to Marathon. Greek soldiers are going to charge the Persians. Persians had a couple things that were not going so well for them. They had weak armor, poor communication, and were untrained in land combat. If you recall from talking about the Persian Empire, Darius would allow, just like Cyrus would allow religious freedom, he would allow cultures that he took over to maintain the way they were living as long as they provided individuals as soldiers. And so because the Persian Empire had grown so large, they had taken over many different regions. So these individuals who are fighting for Persia speak different languages, they have different resources, they have different weaponry that they use. They've never fought together, so they're untrained. They really don't have a whole lot of organizations. In this battle, the Persians are going to end up fleeing or running after several hours of fighting. And after these several hours, over 6,000 Persians were killed, but only about 192 Athenians. And it was just the Athenians who were fighting here. And so it's pretty obvious to see who the winner of this battle was. Greek soldiers were called hoplites, a Greek foot soldier who was armed with a spear and a sword, armored with a helmet, breastplate, and shield. So the Athenians, and we will see soon as well, the Spartans, are going to be much more organized. They're all going to have the same type of weaponry, the same armor. They're going to be familiar with fighting with one another. So they have an advantage there against the Persians, not to mention their on home field advantage. In Greece, adult males were expected to perform military service when the city-state needed them, even in Athens, where their focus was on art and architecture and the individual. Most Greek men did receive some kind of military training. Greeks fought in something called a phalanx formation, and this is going to become a very important way of fighting in history. Greek military formation where soldiers marched shoulder to shoulder and linked their shields together. So this allowed for better defense, and then they were more intimidating moving towards their enemies. So the result of the Battle of Marathon is that the Greeks defeat the Persians, and there is a story about this guy named Phidippides. And Phidippides is believed to have run from Marathon to Athens to spread the good news, because the Athenians were trying to decide if they were going to evacuate. They didn't know, because the Persians were so close, they didn't know if they should evacuate or stay in the city. And so Phidippides was running ahead to let the Athenians know that, yes, it is safe. The Athenian soldiers did defeat the Persians. So the story goes that he ran the 26 miles back to Athens, and he ran these 26 miles straight and so quickly that when he got there, he was able to give the news, "Rejoice, we conquer," and then the story goes that he dropped dead from the run. Ironically, that's where marathon comes from, the name of a marathon. A marathon is 26.2 miles if someone were to run it, and that is the distance that was from Marathon to Athens. So this is where the word marathon comes from in terms of the race that we have today. So 10 years goes by, and there's a little bit of fighting here and there, no big, huge battles. And in this time, Darius is going to no longer be ruler. His son Xerxes is going to take over, and his son Xerxes is then going to attack again, and he's going to mount a very large attack. He's going to have somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 soldiers with him to attack Greece. After the First Persian War, the first section of the war, Greek unity really didn't last very well. Sparta and Athens went back to being enemies, and so this is going to cause some issues in terms of defense against the Persians. Which takes us to the Battle of Thermopylae. Now, if you have ever seen the movie 300, the Battle of Thermopylae is what the movie 300 is based off of. It's just this one battle. The way that the battle worked, the Persians and the Greeks fought for 3 days at Thermopylae. Now, this is a narrow mountain pass, which means there's land where they're standing. Immediately to one side of them is the sea, and immediately to the other side is a very tall mountain. So it's a very skinny area that actually has land. So this was intentional on the Greek side, because what they intended to do was they didn't have as many people. Now, according to the movie, there were only 300 Spartans. That is not true. There were 300 Spartans, but there were also 2,000 other soldiers who were fighting with them. And so these 2,300 soldiers, including the 300 Spartans, were up against 100,000 to 300,000 enemies. And so what they did is they kind of funneled the Persians into the space because it was so narrow. So it kept the Persians from being able to attack all at once. Instead, there was only one line of fighters that could attack at a time. Unfortunately for the Greeks, a traitor did tell Persians of a secret passage that allowed them to surround the Spartans and the other soldiers fighting for the Greeks. And so what ended up happening was the Persians did defeat them in the Battle of Thermopylae, but the Spartans continued to fight even when there was no hope that they would be able to escape or survive it, because they wanted to give Greeks enough time to organize and to evacuate cities if they needed to be evacuated. The Athenian leader, a tyrant from the tyranny style of government, Themistocles, realized that they could not defend the city-state on land and win. So what they did is they moved everyone onto ships or triremes while the Spartans defended Thermopylae. So when the Persians ended up making it to the city of Athens, they found nobody because the city had been evacuated onto the ships. And so what they ended up doing is they burned the city to the ground. So they burned Athens. And then they went home because there was no one left. Next, we have the Battle of Salamis. This is going to be another big battle in the Persian War. And this is led by Themistocles. Themistocles is the Athenian leader. And this is going to be a naval battle. The first two battles were largely on land. This one is going to be all on sea. Athens is a very powerful sea power, and so they had a lot of ships. They're going to bring their Greek fleet to a narrow channel near the island of Salamis to fight Xerxes. Greeks are going to use battering rams on their ships, so if you take a look at the front of the ship here, what they would do is they would actually ram their ships into other ships, destroying them. A third of Persian ships are going to be lost with this strategy. The Greek navy caught the Persians by surprise in the narrow Strait of Salamis, where their advantage in numbers was reduced. So if you take a look here, we have the Persian fleet coming in, and the Athenians and the Spartans, who are paired up here, are going to fight against the Persians. 200 Persian ships in all were sunk. The Greeks only lost about 40 ships, and the Persian navy did sail back to Persia. The effects of the Persian Wars is going to be that the Greeks defeat the Persians at Marathon and Salamis, but they lost at Thermopylae. But the fact that they defeated the Persians in these other two gave Greeks control over the Aegean Sea, which is important for military defense as well as trade. And Greeks had united because of a common enemy. Sparta and Athens were able to put aside their differences, and they were able to join forces along with some of the smaller Greek city-states. Athens preserved its independence and continued developments in government and culture, and Athens began heading something called the Delian League. Now, the fact that the city of Athens was able to continue has a huge impact in history because so many achievements were accomplished by Athens after the Persian Wars. So if Persia had taken over Athens, it's likely none of those things would have been accomplished, and history might be different today. Or I guess today might be different because of history. So the Delian League that Athens heads is a military alliance of 140 city-states. And basically, it's Athens being in charge of providing for future defense for the city-states of Greece. It's kind of like trying to bring everyone together, even though the city-states are all very separate. Money is collected and given to Athens to build an empire, and money is used from the Delian League to build the Parthenon in Athens, which is going to anger a lot of the city-states who are within this Delian League. And this is an image of the Parthenon, which is a very important structure in Athens, but the money was not supposed to be used for that purpose. The Parthenon was the largest of several temples built on the top of the Acropolis, which was a rocky hill in the center of Athens. And the leader of the Delian League ended up being Pericles. He is one of the leaders in Athens, and he is going to be the one who's kind of in charge of this Delian League. He's also the one who leads Athens in a golden age, which will come at this point in history prior to or before the war that we are going to talk about next, and that will be covered in the next video.